Our next presenter will talk a little bit about how to organize our communities both internally and externally to address some of those challenges. I'm going to have Dustin Craun come and talk about the ecology of community organizing. Dustin?
In the name of God, the merciful, the mercy-giving. As a Muslim, I'm blessed to spend a lot of time in churches. I work with the PICO National Network, one of the largest networks of faith-based community organizing in the United States. And I've been doing a lot of thinking of how do we get Muslims involved in this incredible multi-faith movement that is building, that is bringing justice and working on key issues throughout this country. Like combating gun violence in our cities throughout America, where we have, in cities, people walk every night, once a week, to say we're not going to stand for this violence anymore. Where we work with young, undocumented folk known as dreamers who've created such an incredible movement that we're about to pass immigration reform this year that will give amnesty to 11 million people in this country. Where is the Muslim community on these issues, right? And so that's what I wanted to think about today, because baseline for us is how do we get back to thinking about this idea of ummah, meaning community in Arabic, people in Hebrew. How do we think with an ummah-wide consciousness again? How do we get to know each other on a deep level and actually know one another as it's called for us in the Quran? And so, within these interfaith spaces, what I've found is that openings occur. The tawfiq, the divine assistance of God is there. I've seen such incredible victories this year that I know that to be true. Alhamdulillah. And I want to see us vision in the Muslim community to say, where are we going in the next 20 years? So imagine a world where the single most diverse religious group on the planet, American Muslims, are united. And not only that, but we're involved in interfaith movements to bring justice, where we focus within our interfaith work on what is justice, what does mercy look like, what does peace look like in each of our traditions, right? Imagine a world where women leadership in our community is taken seriously, where mosques are safe spaces for everyone, and people don't leave the mosques and become atheists. Right? Imagine that world and how we build that together. That's what I want to talk about today. As a young boy, my mom told me stories that I would always turn the radio until I'd find a preacher before I could even speak. And so it's not surprising to me that I would look towards people living their lives by prophetic examples of how to create justice in this country. And so the first one for me was Martin Luther King Jr. when I was young. And so I was shocked in 1992, when I was about 12 years old, to see the Ku Klux Klan on the Colorado State Capitol protesting the first Martin Luther King parade in the city of Denver, the first officially state-recognized holiday. And so with that, my frames around racial justice began to develop as someone from a more privileged white background. I looked into what does it actually mean to live an anti-racist life, right? Because this is this history of violence, and those people standing outside protesting us being here are part of the long legacy of white supremacy, and they should be called that. We shouldn't separate Islamophobia and anti-Semitism from the long history of white supremacy in this country. We have to stand up for our anti-racist beliefs that are within the Quran. And so it was Malcolm X who really showed me a vision for my life. When I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, I saw three things: fighting for racial justice in this country, community organizing and what that could do to build power and transform society and transform the United States, and Islam. So with Malcolm's vision, I started to research Islam more. And so it was within it that I read this verse in the Quran talking about how God has made us into races and tribes so that we would recognize, not just know, but recognize each other. I take this Quranic imperative seriously. But sadly, within 6 months of converting to Islam, I quit practicing. And I told my friends I'm never going back to that mosque because it doesn't respect interfaith voices, it's intolerant, it's ignorant, it has no it doesn't understand the society that we actually live in, it's irrelevant with issues of social justice, and there's no space for women, and they don't even care. So I said, I'm not going back. Luckily, all praises to God, I met teachers who I could see my vision of Islam through. Imam Warithdin Muhammad, Imam Zaid Shakir, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, people like this who I felt were more embodying the vision of Islam. And with that, I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area 6 years ago to begin to be mentored by people like Imam Zaid and really see what would a transformative society look like for American Muslims. And not only living in the Bay, the other blessing we have is this incredible nonprofit community that's really visionary and really transforming the way that we look at the world and how we do community organizing. While we also have an incredible business community that's all about disrupting the technology that we use and connecting people. And that's where this term ecology comes from. How do we begin to truly think about our community in a way where we think of all of it and we think of our parts as connected? This idea of ummah, right? A global community, not just Muslims. How do we think of how our actions affect each other? And how do we think about, well, what are next stages for us? Building community foundations, building strong educational infrastructure, building startups together, our serious advocacy work, right? Our cultural production, and actually making our institutions like mosques strong and, again, open for everyone. And finally, in mentorship pathways. Because the reality is we're a community that is growing inside to the extent that by 2030, the year we're talking about, we're going to be Muslims will be more than 1/4 of humanity. And will be more than 1/4 of humanity. And the Muslim size in the population of the United States will grow by, will triple in size. And so I want to talk to you quickly about this model that I'm developing of how we would do this. How would we build unity, right? So baseline, we have to recognize the traumas and abuses that come with this history of war against Muslims throughout the world. And then the internal traumas that I'm talking about here today, right? We have to actually build workshops around what does it mean to build unity amongst American Muslims across our racial, class, and gender divisions. So we have to embrace our differences to even move towards building unity and truly visioning what the future looks like for us. From that, we have to develop deep community organizing networks because ask anyone in places like Washington, D.C., you can have all the policy and lobbying you want, but if you don't have a strong grassroots base, your work means nothing. And we don't have a grassroots base. So we have to build it. And then we have to be allied with these, amazing interfaith alliances that are exploding throughout the country, like the PICO National Network. And then, possibly then, we could have a relationship to this idea of power and how we shift the world and the vision that we want to build as a collective community. So that's why I'm working to found this nonprofit, Ummah-wide, where we're working on tying grassroots educational models to community organizing models to build unity within the American Muslim community and really focus on this grassroots work to bring about spiritual, social, economic, racial, and environmental justice for all people, regardless of race, religion, nationality, etc. Right? Within the PICO, and like I said, I work within the PICO network, and we have a relational-based model of community organizing where we take relationships seriously. We do research on what our community issues are to move towards actions, and we're blessed to have quite a few Muslim institutions that we're working with at this point throughout the country, and we're continuing to grow those networks. So, yeah, this is a recent gathering that my friends and I, some dreamers, formerly incarcerated people who we've been blessed to really transform things around mass incarceration. in the place where I work, Richmond, California. We went to Washington, D.C. together, and we were able to vision and imagine a future where all of us are able to work for social justice in this country. Thank you. Peace be upon you.
Thank you so much, Dustin. And